is making content that shares tips and tools to enhance productivity and improve growth mindset. I think Vihan will probably drop a link to his YouTube channel in the comments a bit later. But he will be talking about finding your why and pursuing passions, and not just your passions. It taps into the purpose that even Dominic talked about, and why we don't have to be stuck doing what we're currently doing, and we can be more aligned with what we should be doing, that we are born to achieve that thing that we're meant to achieve while we are here on this earth. So I'm going to hand this time over to Vihan. Now, of course, a lot of the stuff that he's going to be referencing in his materials, a lot of it has also been covered with Simon Sinek's Start With Why. I will also drop a link to a summary of this book in the chat box after his talk. But Vihan, over to you.
Thank you, Joe. Let me just start by saying thank you so much for the opportunity. It's so amazing to be here and listen to all of these amazing presentations and what everybody's talking about how much there is to learn about purpose. And it's not just very one-dimensional, that there are so many layers to how your mindset can evolve and the things that you have to consider when you are pursuing your purpose. Let me start by just sharing my screen and giving you guys an idea of how finding your why and understanding your purpose can actually be more of a journey, and there are a lot more things to consider. So let me start with that. All right, so let me just start by introducing myself. I mean, I've always been a productivity nerd a little bit, and I've kind of been on a quest to always find out what my mission was and what I wanted to be doing, what I'm meant for. And so, a lot of people kind of just wait for the answer to be given to them. But the truth is that it does take a little bit of introspection and experimentation to really know what your calling is. And as far as I can remember, I've always wanted to create content and be a part of something that would either educate or entertain an audience. And that's why I moved to Los Angeles about 6 years ago, to be closer to the entertainment industry and, kind of help opens up the doors if you're working with more creatives and like-minded people. So that was something that I kind of took into my own hands because I wanted to be in the environment that would allow for that to happen. So for a little while now, I've been creating short 5 to 7 minute documentaries on YouTube that are centered on productivity primarily, but the essence of it is in personal development and having a growth mindset. The channel's quickly growing, and I feel very, very confident now that it's more in line with what I'm meant to be doing, and it's kind of on track with my purpose. And so a lot of my videos kind of delve into concepts that help you understand more about your growth mindset and discovering your purpose over time. So it's a little bit more of introspection that you have to do, but these concepts lay the groundwork. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you to 2 thought-provoking concepts that help lay the groundwork for you. And I'm going to start with the first one, which is the golden circle. As Joe mentioned, the golden circle is a theory that was developed by British author Simon Sinek, and it was popularized in his book Start With Why. We'll drop that in the link below. Yeah, I'm sorry, I lost connection. Yeah, so yes, it was developed by Simon Sinek, and it was a book that kind of considers 3 concentric circles in your life. You have your why, your how, and your what. And most of us, for the most part, we always start with considering what our what is, because we always identify ourselves based on our roles. But the advice that Simon Sinek puts forth is to identify what your why is. So you have to start with your why. Let me walk you through this now. So your why is your purpose. It's your cause or your belief or the driving force behind whatever you do. If you do not know why you're doing what you're doing, then it'll be extremely hard for you or anyone else to really know why you're there. And you have to have clarity of that. So if you do not know your why yet, you have to ask yourself, what is the reason behind what you're doing? Or what gets you out of bed every day? And answering this question can take a little while. It requires a little bit of soul searching, and the process might be a little difficult and time consuming. But once you are able to answer that, then you can begin to identify what your reason for being is, and that will help form your journey going forward. The next thing that you have to consider is your how. So that is your approach or your method that you put in place that can differentiate you from others like you. And it's kind of the elements that help you achieve your why based on your routine. And finally, your what, which is the outside circle. This is, for many people, identified, like I mentioned earlier, is based on their job or their service. It's essentially what you want to achieve. So these are results that you may want to see or goal that you want to get close to. You know, it can be things like publishing a book or losing weight or winning a prize, something like that. Now, as you may know, a lot of people, whenever you're communicating who you are, you start from the outside in. You talk about what you do first, and then you talk about your process, and then you mention why you do it. Now, this isn't normally the best way to do it, but most people typically tend to do it because it's easiest to understand, and they tell people what they do and how they do it, and then they expect some kind of result, like a purchase or a vote or support or anything like that. And as you probably guessed, the right way to do this is starting from the inside out. You have to start with giving people an understanding of what your why is and what the reason is behind whatever you're doing. So the reason why brands like Apple and Nike have done so well is because they have leaned into what their why is. So as you can imagine, a brand like Apple is known for its iPhones and its MacBooks and other technological products, but that's not the idea that they're selling. They're selling innovation. So if because the reason why they are doing so well and they're at the very top of the world is because they're selling an idea. It's not the fact that you are getting the latest iPhone or product. It's mostly about being at the very forefront of innovation. And the same is true for a brand like Nike as well, where it's not just a shoe, but it's athleticism. It's being able to take control of your life and just do it. So these are concepts that are able to transcend just basic capitalism, if you will. Now, this is not just some pseudo-intellectual theory. This is actually rooted in science, where your brain is composed of your neocortex, which is responsible for rational and analytical thought, and you have your limbic system, which is primarily responsible for emotions and feelings like trust and loyalty and things like that. As you may imagine, this actually corresponds with the golden circle. So the outer section of the brain, the what and the how, correspond with the neocortex, and the why corresponds with the limbic system. So this is the limbic system, as I mentioned, is the part of the brain that controls emotions and feelings. So when you communicate what your why is, you are able to get people to resonate with that message because you are controlling their emotions and the behaviors and their tendencies to actually understand what you're saying, as opposed to just selling them on the product that you are offering. And that's the reason why you should have clarity of your why, because when you're able to understand what your why is and communicate it effectively, it can be the most important thing that you can do, because it's what inspires other people to action. And that's how you explain your purpose and the reason for what you do, for why you do what you do. So shout it out loud, but you have to understand what your why is. And only then will your how and your what be seen as a result of that. So that was the first concept. The second concept that I want to introduce you to, well, let me end the first concept with a quote from Simon Sinek that goes like this. It goes like this: people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. If you talk about what you believe, you will attract those who believe what you believe. Very powerful quote. The second concept is an age-old Japanese philosophy called ikigai. It's been known for a long time that the Japanese island of Okinawa is home to the largest number of centenarians, or people over the age of 100. And a majority of the population do not have the desire to retire, and they continue to live a purpose-filled life. This is because of ikigai. They continue to do their work day in and day out, and they experience a great sense of happiness throughout their lives. Ikigai loosely translates to reason for being. So it generally refers to the mental or spiritual circumstances under which individuals feel that their lives are valuable. It's not linked to any financial status or anything like that. So even if a person feels like their present is dark at the current moment, they can still feel ikigai because they have that reason for being. And this is where this becomes so powerful. Now, how do you achieve ikigai? Well, for each one of us, this tends to be a little different. There are 4 components to each of our lives. It's what you love. So for a lot of people, this tends to be things like artistic or creative endeavors, like reading, writing, filmmaking, things like that. But it's not limited to that. So you can love doing plenty of things. What you are good at, pretty self-explanatory. It's a skill that you could develop or be good at. Most of the time, we tend to think of what we're good at as an innate talent or gift, but I choose to think of it as what you can work on and develop so that you can eventually become great at it. And what the world needs is what you can do to provide value. So anything that you can do to have an impact or provide value through whatever you're doing is what the world needs. And what you can get paid for, because quite frankly, anything that you are doing needs to be financially sustainable for you to have the freedom to continue doing it. Although a lot of people choose to not veer in that direction because they want to pursue simply what they love and not consider the financial state of everything. So that's a component as well. Now, each individual's ikigai is very, very specific to that person and their own values and desires. So to discover your ikigai, you need to identify what the map to your happiness is. You have to gain an awareness of the current status of your life and do, as I mentioned earlier, a little bit of introspection. And you can do this by asking yourself 4 precise questions. And at this time, I'd recommend, if possible, I recommend you grab a piece of paper and a pen so that you can write this down, just so that you know where you stand and you can identify what you might need to change depending on where you stand. So for the sake of time, I'll move fairly quickly with this, but I'll give you a little bit of time to think as I ask you these questions. So the first question is, what do you love and are good at? The cross section between this is your passion. So I'll give you about like 15 seconds, but this is something that normally takes a little bit more time. But I'll give you about 15 seconds to just think about this and process it. Normally, as I mentioned, what you love and what you're good at tends to be a lot of artistic and creative endeavors, but it can be things that you gain a lot of gratification out of because of the fact that you were doing well at them and you were able to still gain fulfillment out of the fact that you are pursuing what you love. So your passion is something that a lot of people talk about. They talk about being able to move in the direction of what you love doing. But a lot of people find themselves stuck over here because they're not able to make it financially viable, and they're not able to feel like they're making an actual impact through that. If you do find yourself stuck here, the recommendation would be to learn to promote yourself better and market yourself so that you can actually make it financially viable and move a little bit more center towards your ikigai. The next question is, what do you love and the world needs? Take a second to think about it. It's really tricky when you ask these questions because you tend to confuse what you love with what you are good at and feel like whatever you are good at can bring value, but there tends to be a little bit more of a separation between these things. So what you love and what the world needs is called your mission. For anyone in this area, your goal should be to develop your skills a little bit better so that you can get good at them. And once you're able to do that, you will be able to move a little bit more center in this circle and find your ikigai by being able to make it financially viable and sustain it for a long period of time. The third question is what you are good at and what you can get paid for. This is your profession. Now, for the most part, most of us tend to live in this area. Anyone who has a 9-to-5 or any kind of job that you are able to provide value through and get paid for, that's your profession. It's your job, it pays the bills, but you may not necessarily be truly, truly happy. And if you're here, you should aim to try new things, because only by trying new things will you find out what you are truly interested in and what you are most passionate about. And the fourth question is, what does the world need and what can you be paid for? This is called your vocation. So an example of this would be a professor in college or high school. Now, you're obviously providing value through your education or the things that you've learned, and you're getting paid for it. But for the most part, whatever you're teaching is cyclical. It's constant. There's no real iteration to it, and you're kind of getting bored by it, and you don't love it too much. So what you can do when you find yourself stuck here is to try and challenge yourself by learning new things, so that you can keep your interest sparked and you can keep learning new things to move a little bit more center, as I mentioned. Now, the fundamental truth of Ikigai is that various aspects of your life overlap in order for you to actually find true bliss. Although many of us, for the most part, tend to consider each part of our lives, our relationships, our jobs, our happiness, in completely separate individual silos. And there's a lot more of an overlap than we previously knew or imagined that we actually think of. The magic really happens when that overlap comes in, and you have to ask yourself, what are the activities that can exist in multiple spheres, that can actually have a cross-section between your passion, mission, profession, and vocation? And when you're able to find that, you have to be able to dedicate more time to those things. Because far too often we give ourselves excuses about that we don't have time to pursue the things that we want to do and build our businesses or anything that might create long-term value for us. So you have to find a way to dedicate more time to the things that are able to live in those 4 boxes. So those are the 2 concepts. I think, it's really good to assess both modern concepts, modern being the golden circle, as well as an age-old one like Ikigai, to know that there is a common thread through all of this, that you have to know what your reason for being is, and that kind of influences everything that you do going forward. I really hope that this helps you guys, because this forms a major part of what I do with the videos that I make online, and I feel like I've barely scratched the surface with this presentation, but there's so much more that I discuss in depth on my channel, on YouTube. And in fact, I'm actually releasing a video tomorrow that goes in a little bit more depth into Ikigai and discusses more about the history of it and what the research is behind it that validates why it's a legitimate theory. As I mentioned, I think that I'm just in this presentation alone, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants with everybody else that's spoken before. And I really hope that this brings you some value, and please check out the channel as well. And with that, I will hand my time back to Joe.
Thank you so much, Vihan. Well, I don't envy you, because this specific topic, well, you and Dominic, this is a mother topic. I mean, we could talk about this for days, not merely minutes, hours and days. We can really do a deep dive. Perhaps I could ask a question, maybe open up that question to everyone, really, all of the panelists. So you're still listening, of course. You talked about start with why, Simon Sinek. Now, is that a challenge in trying to define what that why is, and putting, say, a thumb on that why in moments of adversity? Because adversity forces us to change.
For sure.
Sometimes it just pulls the rug from under our feet, and then you start to question that why. Mm-hmm. Now, is it that the original why was incorrect, or do we need to find a new why?
Well, I don't really think that I don't think that adversity is completely exempt from anything that you are passionate about or you want to pursue. In fact, I think that the adversity can actually validate the fact that whatever you are doing that you thought previously was your purpose or your passion, if you are able to make it through that adversity and still stay with it, that validates the fact that that is in fact something that you are willing to endure hardship with. Yeah. So I think I wouldn't recommend trying to completely avoid adversity, because you don't know whether you truly love something unless you are able to love the process of it.
Yeah.
And so often we tend to conflate our passions and our purpose with an end goal. We think that we want to get a certain milestone, but but we aren't willing to do the work and live in that process. And you can never really reach a goal without loving the process, I don't think. Because if that were true, then everybody would be able to do it. So adversity actually just tests you and makes you realize whether your purpose is in fact something that you are willing to stick with, and whether it's true to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In your opinion, do you think why and purpose are the same thing, or is one a subset of the other?
Well, I think purpose in its simplest form is being able to bring value to other people. And I think that that's true in any sense. If it's through charity, if it's through having a business that's able to bring people value, that purpose exists through serving.
Right.
And that's not to say that cannot benefit you either financially or through any other means. But purpose solely lives in the form of existing to serve other people. And your why is the driving force behind what you do. It's what helps inform your reason for doing anything. And that can always change. That may change over time. So, for instance, something that I say with regard to my content that I'm creating right now, I believe that my why right now is to spread a message. And to educate and entertain people through my content. And that I feel will stay the same, but my means of doing that and the platform or the distribution method, which is the what, can always change. But I think the core essence of it will stay the same.